Hello everyone, welcome back. And this morning, Barcelona drew PSG in the quarterfinals of the Champions League, and I am very excited about this matchup. I know any team that Barcelona were going to come up against at this stage of the competition was never going to be an easy opponent, and of course Mbappe is on the other team. I think he's the best player in Europe, but I think Barcelona, they are more than capable of beating PSG and going through to the semis. And I think this is a really interesting matchup for a lot of reasons. Of course, you're coming up again against the best player in Europe, but you're also coming up against Ousmane Dembele, which is an ex-Barcelona player, and also everything that happened between Messi and Barcelona and PSG, and all the history that Barcelona and PSG have against each other in the Champions League. I think this is going to be a really entertaining match. And like I said, at this stage of the competition, there's not an easy draw in the quarterfinals. Whoever Barcelona was going to come up against, it's not going to be an easy opponent, and PSG is definitely not going to be easy for Barcelona. But me personally, I would much rather play PSG than play Man City, because even though Mbappe is the best player in Europe, I don't think PSG are the best team in Europe, and I think Barcelona, given how they will match up against each other, I think Barcelona, they do have a pretty good chance to have a good performance in both of these games. And a lot of people are talking about how can we minimize the impact that Mbappe is going to have on this game. Some people are saying that Araujo should switch to right back, and I understand there are some tactical decisions that need to be made. And of course, I'm sure we all saw at the World Cup how dangerous Mbappe was, because in that World Cup final, for the first 75 minutes, he did nothing, but it just takes a little bit. It takes him to wake up, and he's able to make something completely by himself. And he completely changed the game for France, and every single time he got a touch on the ball, it was dangerous for the defense, and everyone was awake. He is one of those rare players in Europe that just doesn't even need his teammates. He just needs the ball, and he's able to create something completely by himself. And I think we saw that in the game against Sociedad. And of course, Mbappe coming up against him, it's going to be not a very easy game for Barcelona. I will completely admit that. And I really haven't watched that many PSG games this year, but I watched most of their games for the past 2 years when Messi was at PSG, because I wanted to watch every single game that Messi plays before he retires. And so even I had to watch PSG, who were just so boring and dreadful to watch at times. But I think this year, Luis Enrique, he's done a lot of good with PSG, and I do think they look like a better team as a whole. And again, I haven't watched them enough this season to be 100% sure, but for the last 2 years when I did watch PSG frequently, that midfield was terrible, and I don't think they made enough signings in that position to really make me worry that Barcelona are going to be outclassed in the midfield in this game, because I think Frenkie de Jong, I think he's going to be healthy for the first leg. Gundogan and Christensen, possibly maybe if Pedri comes back for the second leg, but I would doubt that for now. I think, Frenkie de Jong, Gundogan, and Christensen, I think they would be able to win the midfield battle for Barcelona, and that's one thing that I'm pretty sure about. I think one matchup already that I'm very worried about is Dembele against João Cancelo, because Dembele, as frustrating as he was to watch, and of course, with all the problems that he had at Barcelona, he was such a dangerous player, and you cannot fall asleep for a second, and you have to have a very good defensive fullback to be able to minimize the impact that he has on the game. João Cancelo is not a good defensive fullback, and he's not going to get the freedom that he usually gets to go forward, of course, with Dembele on the field. And Dembele is not one of those players that you can allow to go 1v1 against your defender, and at the other flank, Mbappe is also that player that you cannot allow to go 1v1, so it's a difficult situation for Barcelona. And again, Cancelo is not the best defensively, so I do worry about that a little bit. But Koundé on the other side, if he is to play right back, I think he did very well against Kvaratskhelia on Napoli. But of course, Mbappe versus Kvaratskhelia, there is no comparison right now. And as of now, I'd like Araujo to stay centrally. I think Koundé, he might get torched a little bit on that left side because of how good Mbappe is. But I just think moving Araujo out of his best position, and I think Barcelona's best defense is Koundé, Araujo, either Cubarsí or Inigo Martinez, and then João Cancelo. So I just don't think Barcelona, they should really mess with that defense that much. The only change I think they could possibly make is maybe putting a defensive fullback on that left side instead of Cancelo. Even though I really like Cancelo, I just think, man, Dembele against Cancelo, I think it would be a long day for Barcelona's defense. And my mind could change on that, but I really think Araujo, he should be staying centrally, and I think Mbappe, he does operate in those central positions as well. So if you move Araujo to the wing, Mbappe, I think if he's struggling against Araujo, he would maybe move to the center anyways. But if he's doing well against Araujo, then that kind of defeats the whole purpose of moving Araujo out there anyways. I don't know if you all would disagree with me on that, but I think for now, Koundé at right back, I think it could possibly work well enough in this game. And another thing I wanted to bring up is I'm so glad that Messi left PSG in the summer, because if PSG fans were just decent enough to not boo him because of how bad their team was, then he would be on the team playing up against Barcelona, and you definitely don't want to see that as a Barcelona fan. And right now, there's a lot that Xavi has to figure out to get the best out of his Barcelona players, and again, minimize the risk of having Mbappe on the other team, because he's one of those players that can just create something completely by himself. You have to always keep an eye out for him. But again, I would rather go up against the best team in Europe instead of the best player. Again, he has a good team around him, but I'd rather not play City. I'd rather play PSG. And again, I look at PSG's midfield with Zaire Emery. I think Zaire Emery is good, but Vitinha, Ugarte, Kenyon Lee is good as well, but I just think Barcelona's midfield, they would definitely be able to win that battle and have more control in that match. I'm not sure how you all feel about this matchup, but honestly, I'm pretty excited to see this game, and I think Barcelona, they have a chance against anyone, and PSG, obviously, maybe they're in a better situation than Barcelona are currently in, and the form that they're in is great. I just think Barcelona, they're able to go up against anyone, and I do like this matchup. I'm excited to see how Barcelona plays against PSG. And it wasn't just this matchup that's going to be really entertaining. I think every single matchup was very exciting. Arsenal versus Bayern, and then City versus Real Madrid is going to be great. Atletico and Dortmund, and then of course Barcelona and PSG. All are going to be great matchups. Looking at the other matchups, Atletico Madrid versus Dortmund, that's a very difficult game to call. I would say that Atletico Madrid, they have a better chance to go through because Dortmund, on form, I just don't think they're playing great right now. But in the Champions League, they have been great. They topped their group, the most difficult group in the competition. And also, they had a pretty impressive display against PSV. And PSV has been on form this season as well. So it was really impressive for Dortmund to win that game. And then City versus Real Madrid is very difficult to call because, of course, they met in the semifinal last year. And Man City did very well. And it's very difficult to play against Man City. But, Bellingham has joined. Madrid has only gotten better since last season. That one's a very difficult game to call, and I think, whoever wins that draw would probably most likely be in the final. Then, of course, Arsenal versus Bayern, they do have some history there, and I would think that Arsenal are more of the favorites to win, because I would rather not play Arsenal. I would rather play Bayern, just given the form that both of those teams are in, because Arsenal, I think, currently are one of the best teams in the world. Bayern, even though they have a great squad, and of course, they're never going to be an easy opponent to play against, I just think on form, I would rather not play Arsenal in that situation. There was also some good news that Frenkie de Jong, it's possible that he's going to return for the first leg. I would say it seems pretty likely right now, just given the reports that are coming out. And also, Ferran Torres just joined back in Barcelona's training, so it seems like he's going to be available for Barcelona pretty soon. And for Barcelona, the confidence should be very high, because after that game against Napoli, of course, it was not an easy matchup, and Barcelona still found a way to get it done, even though it didn't look completely comfortable at times. And of course, Barcelona, they still have some work to do before coming up against Mbappe and PSG. But I think Barcelona, they can be confident in their own abilities going into that game. And this game can definitely go a few different ways. It's very difficult for me to predict who's going to win this game. Obviously, I still believe in Barcelona, and I think that they would be able to go get a result in both of these games. And of course, the biggest worry is Mbappe, but I think of all the teams that came up against Messi in the Champions League and came up against Messi every single week. Even if they have the best player in the world, still, you can still find a way to get a win and minimize the impact that they have on the game. And I also want to say, of course, it's not just Mbappe, but I think, of course, he's the biggest player that everyone is worried about, because even Dembele, Barcola, Kenyon Lee, Ramos, they have great players around Mbappe, but Mbappe is the one unpredictable player that you just, no matter how well it seems like you're controlling and defending him, he can still pop up out of nowhere and change the game. And a lot of Barcelona players were interviewed today about the matchup between PSG, and Lamine Yamal was also asked about his thoughts on the game, and he said that Barcelona, they're going to try and attack. They're going to try and play the way that they want to play, and they're going to attack on both wings with two wingers. It seemed like the way he said it, Barcelona were going to play with two wingers, and I think that is the right idea, because Barcelona with four midfielders, especially when it's not Pedri and Gavi as two of those midfielders, I just think Barcelona, they might be wasting a midfielder. I think they should be adding another attacker, and in that game against Napoli, it did help the team. If both Frenkie de Jong and Ferran Torres are available for Xavi, I think he would play both of them. I think he would play Frenkie de Jong as the left central midfielder, and then Ferran Torres, I think he would play him as a left winger. Even though, there's some mixed opinions about Ferran Torres, I think before he got injured, he was doing great for Barcelona, and I think the match is, I want to say it's like April 9th is the first one. Could be wrong about that, but hopefully Ferran Torres, he would get a couple games before that game against PSG, because obviously just coming back from injury and getting thrown into a game like that with that much intensity, that'd be very difficult for a player to come into. And I believe the first leg is in Paris and then the second game is in Barcelona, and I think that's great for Barcelona. I would much rather have that than have it the other way around, and for Barcelona, I think that would be a big boost to have the second leg in Barcelona. Even though it's not in the Camp Nou, I still think it'd be great, just like that game against Napoli, to have the home fans there and helping the team progress into the next round. And again, I've seen some people on Twitter say that they're worried coming up against Mbappe, and Dembele versus Cancelo, they're also worried about that matchup. But again, at this stage in the competition, it's never going to be an easy opponent. And if you want to prove that you're the best team in Europe, you have to go beat the best. And PSG, they're one of the better teams in Europe. They do have the best player in Europe, and this is a part of Barcelona's journey to get to the final. And in the meantime, before the first game against PSG, Barcelona do have games in La Liga, and I hope Xavi does experiment and find the best system that would work the best against PSG. And obviously having that little bit of time, it does help, and you got to try stuff and see what works out before PSG and basically just prepare for that match. I think I speak for a lot of Barcelona fans when we say that this is the most excited that we've been in a really long time for the Champions League because, Barcelona were in the quarterfinals in 2019, 2020, I want to say, against PSG. And you just felt like the energy of the team wasn't there. You had a feeling Barcelona weren't going to be able to progress because other than Messi and, Pedri, there just wasn't that much talent in the team. But I think now the talent and the belief, it's improved a lot. It's increased this year. And I think Barcelona, they should be feeling confident right now. And in a knockout stage, anything can happen. I think some people maybe have PSG as more of the likely winners in this game, and that's completely fine. I believe in Barcelona, and I think if they play their best, if they play the way that we've seen them play, I think Barcelona can progress to the next stage. And sorry this video was late. I just wanted to make a quick video talking about Barcelona's draw against PSG, and I'm very excited for this matchup, and I know it's going to be a very entertaining tie. And as always, thank you very much for watching my video. I really do appreciate it, and I hope you all have a great weekend.